So here's your pre-AP solving test review. I'm definitely not going over all of these, and I'm kind of skip a lot of the linear, but I'm going to go over a couple of them that are a little trickier, and then we'll kind of, if you have any questions, of course, help each other out or let me know. So solving each equation using any method. So on your test, you're going to have linear, quadratic, and systems. Okay, and I'm not going to say these are linear and these are quadratic. You just should know that stuff. So most of these first four are really easy. The one that's probably going to freak you out, even though it's not that hard, is this guy here because this division sign. So just to show you, if you're solving this, you're going to get rid of this plus 11 first. The opposite of adding 11 is to subtract 11. Okay, and you have b divided by 8 equals, and then 9 minus 11 is negative 2. Okay, and then when you have that, then you deal with this. The opposite of dividing by 8 is to multiply by 8. And that goes away, and b equals negative 2 times 8 is negative 16. Okay, so pretty simple. The other ones on that page are also just, are on the first four, just, solving linear. So distribute, combine like terms are good. Number 5 is a system, but it's substitution, so it's not that difficult. I'll do a more challenging system one on the back. But let's go ahead and do number 6, which is factoring. So remember, if you're going to factor and solve with a quadratic, it has to equal 0. So you need to bring whatever's on this side over to this side. I'm going to make my pencil a little less crazy. There we go. So if I draw my line here, I need to add 4 here, and I'd line it up, and I'd put it with this guy here. Okay? And I have 2r squared plus 11r plus 5. That's a squared. Because 1 plus 4 is 5. Equals 0 if you want to. Alright, good. Then I make my little tree here. And I do 2 times 5, which is 10. And then my middle guy, which is 11. And 10 is 2 and 5. And 1 times 10. Now, 2 and 5 are not going to get me 11, but 10 plus 1 will, right? Now, remember, this right here is a 2. It's not a 1 or no number, so you have to do your factoring by grouping steps. If there's no number in front, then you have the easy stuff. But if there is, you got to factor by grouping. So I write my 2r squared, and then I'll come and grab these guys here. So plus 10r plus 1r plus 5 equals 0. Okay, you write out the 4. Then you group the first 2 and the last 2, and we take out the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor between 2 and 10 is 2, and then they both have an r. And we divide. 2 divided by 2 is just 1, and then I'll have an r here. 10 divided by 2 is just 5, and then there's no r because I took it away. The greatest common factor between 1 and 5 is just 1, and since it's positive, we take out a positive 1. 1 divided by 1 is just 1, right? So r. 5 divided by 1 is just 5. Good? And then from there, we go ahead and write our inside and our outside. We have r plus 5, and we have 2r plus 1. Good. That is not your answer. That is factored, yes, but that is not our answer. To actually answer it, you'd have to do r plus 5 equals 0, and then solve it. And then 2r plus 1 equals 0 and solve it. So you would just subtract your 5 here, and you'd get r equals negative 5. Okay? Now this one you might have to do 2 steps, but I'm going to do it in my head. But I'd have to subtract the 1 and then divide by 2, right? So if I subtract 1, I get negative 1, and then I divide by 2, I get negative 1/2. Okay? So that's a quadratic one. So linear, quadratic, and systems. If you want to go ahead and go to the back... Perfect. So we have some harder linear ones for sure, and then we have some systems as well. I'll do a harder linear, and then I'll do a system. So let's go ahead and do number 9. So on this left side, can I distribute? No. Can I combine like terms? Yeah, I can combine these guys, right? 1a minus 5a, well, that's negative 4a, right? And then here, man, I got lots of distribution that can be going on. And it's pretty much the same thing for number 7 as well. Okay? So negative 9 times 3, well, that's negative 27 with an a on there. Negative 9 times negative 1 is positive 9. 4 times 11 is a positive 44 with an a there. 4 times 3 is 12. So just distributing. Y'all can do that. This negative 4a just comes down because there's nothing I can do with that. So then you're going to combine negative 27 plus 44. So you can do it in your head or in a calculator. Negative 27 plus 44. And we get a lovely 17. So 17a. Good. And then 9 plus 12 is a positive 21. Okay? So then I'm just going to bring this guy over here. The opposite of a positive 17 is negative 17a. Negative 4 minus 17 is negative 21a equals 21. We divide by negative 21, and that equals negative 1. So just distribute, combine like terms, variables to one side, and solve. Basic stuff, okay? 10's a system. It's a little easier. 10 right now is set up for elimination, or you could also do matrix if you know what that is. Some of y'all were doing that on your assignments. But I'm going to go ahead, okay, sorry, 11 and 12 are also quadratics, and 14 is a quadratic, just like the front one. But I'm going to go ahead and go to 13, which is a system, okay? And it's kind of not, it's not set up for elimination, it's not set up for substitution, it's not set up for graphing or anything like that. So you can kind of do whichever way you want. I'm going to go ahead and solve it for, I'm going to do substitution, because that's a good way to do it by hand. So remember, if you're doing substitution, you can solve the top one or the bottom one for any letter you want. But if you remember, it's easiest to solve for a letter if there's no coefficient, or like a 1 in front. So I like here, this x has a 3 and this x has a 6. But this y doesn't have anything and this x has a 3. So the easiest thing is to solve this one for y. That can guarantee me that I'm not going to have any kind of crazy fractions. So I'm going to take this right here and solve it for y. And yet again, you don't have to do it this way. You could do this several different ways. You could solve them both for y and put them in the calculator. You could put them into standard form and do a matrix or elimination. I'm just doing substitution. So to do substitution, I'm going to kind of do everything at once. I'm going to minus 3 on this side and minus 3 on this side. And I'm going to subtract 3x on this side and subtract 3x on this side. So basically all this is going to go away. I'm left with y equals 0 minus 3 is negative 3. And then minus 3x. I can't subtract those things because they're different. Okay? Then I'm going to substitute. I'm going to put this whole equation and substitute it in for that y right there. So I'll change colors, kind of show you what I'm doing here. So negative 12 equals negative 3x minus 6. But then my y value is negative 3 minus 3x. And then it basically kind of becomes like a linear function, right? We just distribute and solve. So I'm going to distribute here. Remember, that's a negative 6. Negative 3x. Negative 6 times negative 3 is a positive 18. Negative 6 times negative 3 is a positive 18 with an x on that guy. Distribute, then combine like terms. I can combine these guys here. So I have negative 12 equals negative 3 plus 18 is 15x plus 18. Then I subtract 18 over here. And I get negative 30 equals 15x. I divide by 15. And I get x equals negative 2. Okay, that's great. But you cannot stop there. I will not give you full credit. X does equal negative 2. That's fantastic. But I need to find y as well. To find y, you can plug it into whichever equation you want. But since this one's already solved, I'm going to plug it in there. So I said y equals negative 3 minus 3x. Well, x is negative 2. It's going to go right there. So negative 3 minus 3. But x is negative 2. So you can put the whole thing in your calculator if you want to, or just PEMDAS. Do I subtract first or multiply? You multiply, and negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. By the way, all these are y equals if you need to write that. And negative 3 plus 6 is a positive 3. Perfect. So you can give me that as your answer, or technically, a more lovely way to do that would be negative 2, if this would write, and then 3 as a system. Okay? So I showed you linear, I showed you a system, and I showed you quadratic. You're going to have all of them on your test kind of all mixed up, and you got to pick which one to use depending on what's given to you. And that honestly, and for geometry, the first step, or sometimes normally just the first step is the geometry, and everything else after that's just algebra. Okay? There you go. Let me know if you have questions.